Welcome to Truth Be Told. I am your host, Pierre
Mhm.
Kasongo. I am excited about my guest for today. He is currently he's currently completing his studies in finance at the University of Alberta, and it's been an incredible journey navigating the world of the world of financial management and analysis. One of his most enriching experiences has been working at a construction company. And in addition, he is also learning skills including employee relationships, human
Mhm.
resources, and is also an entrepreneur. Please welcome to Truth Be Told, Cesar Manzi.
Yes.
Caesar,
Thank you so much. It's a
welcome.
pleasure having you allow me to be here, man.
You are talking to a crowd and you're quoting
Hmm.
Henry Ford. It says, whether you think you can or you can't,
You're right. Yes.
you're right.
Talk about it.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That's
talk to us about that mentality that
that's
you
you know that's
have.
a great question. I think for the longest time, I think that I didn't know the difference between a fixed mindset and growth mindset. And I guess the post that you saw, just me in a crowd, was actually at a leadership conference. Funny enough. So I was fortunate enough to get on stage to chat a little bit with some of the leaders, shakers of the world of Canada. So just been very fortunate to get around people who created a massive success in the world of entrepreneurship around the world, mainly in North America, of course. But yeah, I guess quoting Henry Ford, it was definitely a quote that affected my life because for the longest time, I was very held back by just like my own thoughts of like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if you can. And at the end of the day, like those negative thoughts will affect what you do, right? So, and when I realized it's essentially your perspective on things, right? Um, and so when I started changing my thinking, that's when things start changing, right? So when I started changing my thinking, my actions changed, and the doors started opening around me. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a little bit when it comes to the post and just where I was.
I very much could
Yeah,
relate because I was watching this episode. No, I was watching Winning Time about two
yeah.
years ago, and in oh, you've seen the
No, I haven't
series?
actually. No.
No. Oh, it's a great series about the how the Lakers and the beginning of the Showtime era. John C. Riley is talking about this about the invention of the mile and this and like for years no everybody thought it was impossible to run it under
Mm,
4 minutes, and then this Brit named Roger
yes.
Bannister
Hmm.
uh, decided to take a chance,
Yeah.
run it, and then he ran it for about in 3 minutes 59
Oh yes.
seconds, and he wasn't the most athletic guy. He was a doctor of
What?
neurology, and it wasn't his body that really helped him. It was his
Hmm.
mind.
Hmm. That's huge. And yeah, you're right. Actually, I think I've heard something similar to that, and 100%. Like it's at the end of the day, I think people don't realize it's not the physical things that hold you back. It's your mind, right? At the end of the day, our minds are capable of so many things, but I think a lot of us don't know that and don't truly realize that. And yeah, I think that's an amazing example. I remember hearing that story. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like the fact that that was not even his profession, and he was able to beat that record, right? So that's huge. That's insane.
It's really important to setting goals because the minute you determine it's either look at a goal and either look at just either I can
Hmm.
or I can't, that's really
Yes.
you're either you. there's already, you almost, have like a game over
Yeah,
mindset, because like when you're saying, "Oh, I can't," well, you're shutting the door on all these
right.
opportunities.
No, a
Like
hundred
what?
percent.
Like your mindset is sets so much. Just like it can open up a lot of
Yeah, no, I
opportunities.
agree for sure. It's I'm fully trying to grasp the full concept of our mind and what it can do. I think at the end of the day, there's so many self-limiting beliefs that we all hold truly within us that we don't realize, like a lot of self-sabotaging behavior. And I think it's about like unraveling those and realizing, well, what are those things that I've been telling myself? What are those lies, I guess? What are the lies that I've been telling myself all these years that I now have believed to be true, right? So that's the biggest thing I think hold us all back, I think, in the world. Hmm.
That's true. Like how many times have we looked at our at an accomplishment and think, "Wow, I didn't even know
Yeah,
I could do that. I didn't even
yeah.
think I could do that." Or something as simple as some even something as simple as, well, being a
Hmm.
parent.
No,
Something, like some people said, like, "Look at me,
like
I'm raising a family.
yeah,
I have a home."
yeah,
Like,
right.
I have kids. I'm
No,
looking after them.
it's
Wow.
it's crazy, right? We're truly.
Mm,
I heard this one quote. Um, I think we're truly the most like I don't know. I think I'm butchering the quote. It's like we're not capable of understanding what we're capable of doing. I don't think we fully grasp that a concept. And it's like that the concept of like with a mom, for example, even let's say her child was trapped under a car, she'll be able to lift it, right? On a normal day, she's not going to be able to lift the car, right? It's like, well, what is your body actually capable of when your mind kind of sets you free, right? So I think it plays in so many different roles in our lives that we just don't realize. So, 100%, that's huge.
like you never know, but then when you are pushed to your very
Yeah.
limit, your very moment, then you just turn into a
Hmm.
superhero, and you gain those
Yeah.
amazing skill. Like, even like like
Yes.
athletes or movies, or no,
Yeah.
movie stars, like just the skills that they have to play a certain part on the
Right.
movie screen, or when we watch athletes do like the impossible, what seems to be the
Hmm.
impossible.
No.
Yeah, like I've always admired, uh, like Jerry
Yeah.
Buss. He was, like, at the time he was bringing back the Lakers at a time when the NBA was a sport that
Hmm.
nobody was watching, and then he turned the NBA into a
Really?
show.
Wow. I'm not quite familiar. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's wild.
Yeah, all because
Yeah.
you have a dream, and sometimes it's just, you just need to follow your mind. You just need to set
Yes.
your goal and just have a can do
100%.
attitude. And And by the way, I have to ask you, that
Hmm.
crowd that
Yeah.
you were speaking to, like, you sound like there's like an entrepreneurial
Hmm.
spirit. Uh, like, what was the
Yeah,
event that
no,
was
that's a
taking
great
place?
question. So I had the opportunity to go out to the States. Actually, it was in Tennessee, and so there was a leadership conference that was happening in Tennessee. So a bunch of people that are trying to moving forward in their lives in the sense of wanting to get ahead, building other streams of income. Build a lot of e-commerce businesses. We're all getting together at that leadership conference because we realized the biggest thing that, like you said, it's learning leadership principles, being able to lead yourself before you can lead others. And so I was in that room that you saw was I was getting a chance to kind of share my perspective, my experience, how that has been for me, like how my journey has been so far, in the sense of building businesses when it comes to online, and obviously just getting around people, like what mindset has been for me to grow myself, to pursue change in my life. So that was kind of the crowd that I was essentially in a room with a bunch of other people that are movers and shakers trying to get ahead in their lives. And so that's I guess that's what you saw in that post.
In that moment, did you feel that like this was where you somehow found like your calling, your purpose, where you have that light bulb moment in your head where this is where I feel at my most
Ooh,
authentic?
that is a great question. I think I was definitely afraid. I think talking in front of people is not the easiest thing to do. I think for myself, even that definitely scares me. I It's something I'm overcoming, I guess you could say. You know, that fear of being in front of others. It's a common fear. I love talking one on one. That's always my favorite. But I guess when it comes to talking on stage, there's always that like, oh, the fear of perception of others, right? I think my calling, yes, is that sense of I know for sure this is my future, influencing the world and wanting to make a change in the world. And I think for me, that's my calling, making a positive impact in the world. I've always felt like in this world we came here for a reason. I think we're all here on this planet for a reason, and that's definitely be a positive impact in someone else's life, right? And I've been fortunate enough to get the opportunity to get around people that have done a crazy amount of impact. So I knew maybe I think I'm a Christian myself, and I know if God is opening these doors for me, there might be a reason, and so I think that, yeah, definitely. I think I've definitely started to find my purpose. For the longest time, I didn't really know what it was, and I think being able to stand on stage, being able to talk about things, my experience, my story, what I'm overcoming, what I'm learning, I think it gives me fulfillment and joy, right? So
And uh, that's actually one of those great moments where like speaking on
hmm
the stage, that actually is one of the more great moments where you get to be your
right,
most genuine, because you are sharing your own
right.
story. Like this is just your truth, your story. Like no one can share it like
100%.
you,
No
right?
one can replicate it and tell your story. And yeah, I think a lot of people diminish their own goals and what they want to accomplish by think, oh, there's other people that have done it. There's other people that have, done great things. Why would anybody want to hear from me? And I think it's realizing that there's people that you're gonna connect with that other people are not gonna connect with. There's your story that's gonna relate to someone else's. Uh, I myself would not relate to as much as I tried, right? And it's people realizing that they have like value, and I'm, realizing that I have value in the world to add to others, and I agree with you so much on that concept. I learned this from one of my mentors. It's like you are scared of the perception of others. It's because you are afraid of social rejection, right? At the end of the day, it's like that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's like what if you're subjected to social rejection, which is even worse than just being rejected by one person, right? And so that's why it's like people would rather die than talk in front of people. You know what I mean? So that's big.
I think that's actually the fear of
Yeah.
social rejection. I think that's actually one of the cost of just being genuine, being true to
Right.
yourself. Like if you're really yourself, rather than always
hmm
trying to appeal to
Yeah.
to the masses, then you're not gonna be able to appeal to
hmm
everyone, and some people will push you away, and you're not gonna have that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Like, but in the end, even but despite that, you will have, well, it's still not better to have like
Yes.
a community that truly accepts you for being you, than a group of people that tried to turn you into someone that you are
Yes,
not.
that's so good. I think at the end of the day, and then you don't discover that unless I guess, you put yourself out there, right? It's being willing to put yourself out there to learn and get around people that are gonna, see you for who you are rather than hold you back. I'm going a bit on a tangent, but there's this concept that I learned that's called, the thermostat. And so essentially what it says is that we all have a inherent thermostat of like our certain degrees where we ourselves are held, what like level in life we're held at. And a lot of times we hang around people that lower our thermostat, lower our temperature, are pulling us back in a sense. And that's like you essentially are saying, like it's not the right people to be around with. You have to be around people that raise your thermostat, raise your level of, and put yourself in an uncomfortable situation that allow you to grow and change, right? And for me, the biggest things I've been wanting to do is get around people who raise my thermostat, who did not necessarily make me comfortable, be like, oh, you're good the way you are, because at the end of the day we can always improve by just being obviously content in who we are, but knowing that we can always improve and get better, and we can always raise our thermostat, right? So I think that the social rejection, like that's what holds us back a lot of times, because we don't let ourselves explore and create new connections, making new friends and meet people, right? Because we're like, I want to stay in my bubble. Like I don't want to get uncomfortable. Maybe put myself out there and then get rejected, and then I'm like, now I don't feel those negative emotions, right? But at the end of the day, like those are opportunities to learn, right? I think for the longest time we've been told like, don't talk to strangers. I think growing up, I think that's where the fear comes from, right? Don't talk to strangers. You're gonna get kidnapped. I mean, right?
That was that. I remember
It is.
hearing
I
that
mean,
as a
I
kid.
understand where the fear comes from, but like, what are the odds you've been kidnapped, right? It's a very small percentage to compare to obviously wanting you to meet other people. I think we take those lessons that we learn as a kid and put it in our when we're adults, and we're like, I can't talk to strangers. Strangers are scary, but it's very irrational fear because we're taking that fear that we had of strangers when we were kids, which is valid because you don't want to get kidnapped. But now we're adults. Like, who's gonna kidnap you as an adult? So it's realizing that people are not as scary as we think they are, and we all long for connections. At the end of the day, we all long to feel like we're accepted in the world. So
Part of that tangent reminds me of a quote that that I heard a previous guest
right.
talk to me about, and it's by Jim Rohn. It's you are the average of
Oh
the
yes.
top five people
Hmm.
that you hang out with.
Essentially, yeah, you are who you hang around with. I didn't realize that concept until later on, because once you change, you don't realize it when you're with people, like people that are holding you back, because you don't know what's
Hmm.
different, what's out there, until you change your circle of influence. That's when you realize who's holding you back and not. And I think it's that frustration that comes along with like, well, I need to change. And once I started changing my circle of influence, people who I guess influence my life and decisions, I was like, wow, for so long I've been, kept at a certain level in life, right? It's like if you go to the gym and you hang around five people that don't go to the gym, as much as you think your mind is strong, you're gonna be affected. You're gonna end up not going to the gym. I think it's easier to go
Hmm.
downhill than go uphill, right? So it's always easier to revert back
Yeah.
to negative emotions, negative ways, negative habits than to have good habits, positive habits, good things in life, right? Yeah. Yes.
Yes. If you're always around like people that are, are constantly like really afraid something bad is
Yeah.
about to happen, you're gonna be afraid that the bad things are
Yes.
gonna happen.
100%. You just yeah.
Yeah. And also like just being of
Hmm.
being out there, like, another thing I've noticed that you really do love to be out there. I couldn't help but notice you're you like to literally be out there. Like you've been to some places out
Yeah.
in the world that are just
Thank you. I mean,
beautiful.
I've had been fortunate for sure having parents, or I guess my mom, that's also loves traveling, doing things. So growing up, she wanted to create a lot of experiences for us. Like she's like, let's go places, let's go to Dominican, let's go to Mexico, let's go to. Obviously, I wasn't born here. I was born in Rwanda, and so I've only been here since 2010, so 13 years. So it was a crazy change in the world. You it's like a cultural shock, I guess you could call it. Being in a country where there's snow, it's cold, and so it's not the funnest thing for sure when you come from a place that's
No,
it's always
I can
warm.
imagine.
But I had the opportunity to learn a lot of things, right? Being able to, well, I came here, I didn't speak English, didn't speak any other language than Kinyarwanda, which is the native language back home. So that's also was a whole learning. I think the experiences that I dealt with when I was younger forced me to adapt and learn and grow and connect and be there out there because, well, if I'm moving here, I don't speak the language. How am I supposed to make friends? You kind of have to put yourself out there, or no one else is going to come to you and be like, hey, do you want to be my friend? People don't realize that a lot of times it's on them to put themselves out there and be like, make yourself known, aware, and that's when you're actually going to grow. Sometimes a lot of people, I feel like there's that entitlement culture that we have in our world, that we feel like we deserve things that we haven't worked for. Like, I deserve to have this, I deserve to have this, and like deserving something is it's a negative way to think about stuff. So I think I've always been very trying to stay as grateful as I can be for the opportunities that I've had, for the chances that I've had to be here, to live here, to get opportunities to grow myself, and I'm trying to make the most out of it. I know me and my siblings, we try to cultivate that feeling. Like, I have two other brothers, and it's a great dynamic for sure, just growing up with boys, and obviously my mom, and it's been a great experience. Just, those people having, brothers, having a mom like my mom, who persevered, who worked hard, moving into a new country. It gives you perspective for sure, that you have one life, and at the end of the day, her ceiling, she always says her ceiling is my floor. And so for me, the biggest thing is wanting to make my generation, my kids, feeling really good, so that they can always move forward in life. So yeah, I try my best to be out there. I try my best to be, you know, talking to people, just put myself out there, because you never know who you're gonna meet, right? Your biggest breaks always come from outside your circle of influence, right? That's one of the biggest things I've learned.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Of yeah, because I was, yeah, because like being out in like all the places that
Yeah.
you've traveled to, is there a specific place where you you feel that it's got a personal connection to you, like a
Ooh,
travel destination where it just really hits
that's a great
close?
question. Well, a lot of times when I go to the States, I think that's a very personal thing, because, I'm growing myself, I'm getting around people that I'm learning the most from. So I think for me, if it was the easier answer, it was definitely those places have a personal connection to me, because I know when I'm there, it's like I'm around people who stretch me, push me out of my comfort zone. Because, sometimes I get around my friends, I'm like, oh my God, I'm growing so much, I'm doing so well. But then I'm around people whose self image is like much harder than I am. Their way, the communication skills, the way they communicate, the way they carry themselves, it's like, whoa, there's so many levels to this. So I think that definitely is the most impactful. I guess when it comes to my family, like traveling with my family, um, going to Dominican was really fun. Being in the Dominican Republic with my mom and my brothers, I think was a great time, because I think that was the last time we traveled together before COVID. It was like 2019, so it's been a couple of years actually. Looking back, I enjoyed that. I think it's a very important memory in my mind, of like, wow, that was such a great time, and I definitely want to do that again. Because now we're all getting older, and I'm like, well, we're all having our own lives. Like, we only have like so many years before we all just like, are married, have, our own separate families and things like that. So I think when it comes to that, like, even previously, actually last summer, one of my cousins that lives in London, um, came over, like traveled, London, UK, came over, and we spent a couple of days in Vancouver, just traveling with just me and my brothers. I have never traveled with me and my brothers before, with outside of our parents. We've always traveled by ourselves, but for the first time, all three of us were traveling together and with our cousin, and I think that was a crazy experience. Just being able to just do things on our own, and have that experience together has edged a great memory in my brain. So, and honestly, all the trips have been great. I think I can talk about every single one of them as being something impactful, but I think mainly it's those things that stretch me, and give me a sense of joy, I guess, are were the biggest ones.
Yeah, the great
Yeah.
thing about traveling is that you get to is that you do get to see all different
Oh
people
yes.
from different cultures and backgrounds,
Oh yes.
and it
Oh my goodness.
absolutely.
Dominican was a crazy experience because I that was a whole other culture, right? It was like, wow, this is
Mhm.
how people live here. It's beautiful also because it's, in Caribbeans, like that's a beautiful place to be. So yeah, I agree with you. It gives you also always adds to your perspective of the world. And that's why I want to travel as much as I can, go to
Yeah,
different countries and go to different places, because seeing their way of life always brings value because you're always kind of in a bubble when you live in in Canada or in the North America. You always have your own like ways of living, but you don't know how others live their lives.
they're different
Oh,
foods. It's just a
don't even get me talking
delicacy.
about the food. Oh my goodness.
Ah,
Oh,
yes, my
I'm a
man.
big food guy. I can eat. I love to eat. I love food. So yeah, I agree with you so much on that aspect. Oh man.
Oof, man, if you don't get me started about New
Oh, New
Orleans, oh
Orleans,
my
eh?
god.
I have actually been there, but my friends have, and apparently the food is good.
Oh god, the
Yeah.
food of New Orleans or the views of
Ooh,
Rio de
you've
Janeiro.
been to, oh, you've been to Brazil?
Oh god,
That's beautiful, man.
yes, I
That's
have.
awesome.
Yeah, I've been to Rio de Janeiro
Yeah,
for Carnival and to New Orleans for Mardi
that's
Gras.
perfect. I know they go crazy over there for that. I heard.
Oh yes, it is a party city, and I've always said much love to
Yeah.
the city for all their in light of what's in, of what they went through for
Hmm.
Hurricane Katrina. You know, I always have that big respect
Yeah.
for their
Hmm. I know
spirits.
they definitely are a very lively
Mm.
community. I think my friends were
Yeah.
there last year, and they were sending me pictures, and I was like, "Well, this place is insane." They're just like always moving, they're always doing stuff. There always parades going on, things happening in the city, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's happening?" I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that Edmonton is missing. I think Edmonton is a very quiet city itself, uh, for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Edmonton has room
yes,
for a lot of
yes.
potential. Like, there's already a few cultural things happening, but there could be a
100%.
lot
A
more.
lot, way more.
Yeah, like we have there's a jazz
Hmm.
festival here in Edmonton, but it's not on the scale of
No,
Montreal's. Like, Montreal's jazz festival is an
I'm telling
entire
you,
week.
that's exactly like they just on the east side. They just do things bigger, for sure. Outside of Vancouver, of course, Vancouver. I know Vancouver also is out there, but I know in Toronto even like when they have those you know uh in the summer. I forgot the name of it. The festival. Um, Yeah, Caravana, for
Caravana.
example. I know they have a bit like that's a whole other thing, like those things, the way they celebrate. Because I know in Calgary, even Calgary can do a little bit. Calgary a little bit better than us. They have their own festivals and events that they do really good at compared to Edmonton. That's why I agree with you. Like Edmonton definitely has room for growth when it comes to those things, right? So,
Mhm.
mm.
Okay, and by the way, listeners, keep in mind we're not taking shots at
Right.
Edmonton. Okay, we have a lot of love
We're
for
here.
Edmonton.
We live here for a reason, you know. Edmonton is a
Yeah.
beautiful place. I think, it's a great perspective. Like Edmonton is a very good city to raise a family. I think I've always thought about it. It's hard. It's kind of impossible to live in like a city like Toronto where it's so fast paced. Like if you're trying to raise a family or grow like a community, like it's kind of a bit more difficult because I feel like it's a very party city there. It's very like fast moving. Things are just going, 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 going. If you want to like settle down and have a more of a quiet life in a sense, I think
Yeah.
Edmonton is a great place for that. You know,
Yeah. Well, but I've seen the one thing I will say about Toronto, I've seen how much the average rent
let's talk
is,
about
and
that.
I'm
Yes,
just
that's a whole
oh,
topic of why living in those places is like just no. It's
oh.
crazy. The traffic, like even driving, like it's gonna take you 2 hours to get to the other side. So for me, I love it. The Edmonton is one thing. Like I think sometimes we complain about the traffic in Edmonton. I'm like, having perspective is always the biggest thing. Yeah, people are like, oh my God, it's
What?
taking forever to get to work. I'm like, it takes you 30 minutes. Some people take 2 hours. If you live in Toronto, you're gonna have to wake up 2 hours prior to when you leave so you can get to work on time. Right? So if you're driving, because
By
yeah,
that time, like that's like here, that's like Edmonton. You're almost
you're
in
gone.
Airdrie
You're
by that
literally
point.
you're past. You're like Calgary past. Where to? You're past. I mean, Red Deer. Sorry, and you're almost in Calgary at that point. You know,
Yeah.
you're gone. So that's huge,
Yeah, passive. Yeah.
man.
Oh, but yeah, and this one thing that I noticed, Edmonton is has actually a very distinct style
Hmm.
in the city. Like yeah, if you want to get around the city when it comes to the avenues, just look at the
Yeah.
numbers because the avenues run
Hmm.
east west, the streets go north
Yes.
south. So sometimes you need to look at the first perhaps two or three numbers of the
Hmm.
address, and then street or or avenue, and then it get tells you whether you're going to be heading to the southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, or
Yes.
downtown.
That's I love that aspect of the city because a lot of times in other cities it's all names. All the streets have names, and it's like you just have to know the names, otherwise you're not gonna get anywhere.
When it gets into names, that's when it gets a little bit
So the
tricky.
aspect of avenue and streets like allows easier
Yeah,
knowledge to where you're going and know about.
yeah,
You always
yeah.
lived in Edmonton
So
yourself?
no, actually, no. Edmonton, then Fort McMurray, then
Oh wow, back and
Edmonton.
forth. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Oof, so the places I've lived. Hell, in fact, at one point, my family lived in
Oh my goodness. You know
Yellowknife.
what's so funny? My mom is living in Yellowknife right now, actually. That's what she's working. She's working
Oh,
in the government up
really?
here, and she showed me the
Yeah.
weather sometimes, like in the winter. Oh my goodness,
Oh,
what is that? It's like minus 30, and that's warm. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's it's like,
yeah. In fact, this true
mhm.
story. The once when we were moving from Yellowknife to Toronto, yeah,
Yeah.
and on one of the stops we made was in
Mm.
Grand Prairie, and when we turned on the TV, Prince, we had learned that Princess Di had passed away in the car crash
Oh
in
goodness,
Paris.
jeez, that's
Yeah,
crazy. That must have been insane.
yeah, that's
Oh my goodness. Oh
yeah. Of all things, yeah,
yeah.
that's one of those moments where you
Yeah.
never forget where you were when
Yes,
X
there's those big
happened.
moments in life that you can't forget. You're like, you know where you were at this when this event happened.
Even like when like just even going back to like earlier, the when you mentioned the whole
Oh,
pandemic
oh my goodness.
shutdown.
We all
Oof.
knew where we were when the first day of lockdown happened, or we were doing when they announced a lockdown.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember I was actually
Yeah,
at the gym, and then all of a sudden, I think it was the Mavericks and the Jazz
yeah,
were playing and was
yeah.
going to play a game, and then all of a sudden the ref actually come on the court are saying like, no, 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 the game is canceled. Actually, to be correct, the Mavericks were playing the Nuggets, and it was in the third quarter that Mark Cuban had the reaction on his phone. And the Jazz were playing the Thunder the same night, but they had their game canceled.
That's a lot of money he's losing.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
that's a lot.
And then for the entire year, everything
Oh
starts to
my goodness.
fall down. Like it was already one thing that just like in January, Kobe and Gigi passed away
That was terrible.
in the
Yeah.
helicopter crash.
Oh, that was devastating. That was.
I was I was out of and I was
Oh, that
bummed
I think that
out.
was. I think one of the saddest things that happened in that year. Because like you never literally know. Like
Yeah,
how do you expect? How do you explain that? You know, especially losing your daughter at the same time. Like the
like
wife, I
he,
can't even imagine what she went through.
mhm. Yeah, because I no, I remember turning on the CNN and oh, I'm sorry, not no, like yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was that, and then I thought no, like this has to
Yes.
be a
Yeah.
joke, and then I go up to this, and and then later on, later developing the story, they talk about his daughter being in that
Oh,
helicopter
like
too.
come on, imagine
Oh
that. That's yeah. I don't know. It's one of those moments you're like, wow. It I think adds perspective.
yeah.
Like I think I've said that word like 10 times today, but it just always you never know. You never know how long you're here for, And I think a lot of people are stuck in their
Mm-hmm.
ways of complaining or I mean, obviously life is not easy, as you can tell. Like life is not getting any easier as the world is moving forward. As you can tell by the cost of
Yeah.
everything. But I think at the end of the day, is just
Yeah.
I think the great being grateful is having gratitude, right? Because you literally never
Yeah.
know how long you're gonna be on
Absolutely.
this earth for. Like it could be like that. Like if you had told Kobe like, "Oh, you're gonna die," like a week before, like, "Oh, this is your last week," like you know what I mean? Like things don't. You never actually just know how long you have, where your time is. It's literally anything can happen, and I think it's always just living every day
Hmm.
to the fullest has helped me a lot because otherwise, like just like that, it's done.
Believe it or not, you and Kobe have something in
Tell me.
common:
Hmm,
mentorship.
that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. That
That's
is
huge.
huge. Come on, you gotta have to know your mentorship program. That sounds like a purpose in your life.
Mentorship. Oh
Come on,
my goodness. I mean, mentorship.
let
Like that concept did not exist to me. Listen,
preach.
that
Let's
concept
hear
did
it.
not. A couple of years back, I was like, "What the heck is mentorship? What is that about?" And I think it always comes ties down to everything that we talked about. I can talk about mentorship in forever. I That concept in general is I think it's prevalent now in everywhere. Like workplaces have, oh, who's your mentor? Who are you learning from? Because I think we've all come to realize that in life we are technically interdependent. For the longest time, we all think we can do things independently, that we can accomplish things on our own, which is true. But at the end of the day, we work better together. And I've realized the importance of having people in your life that are where you want to be, right? Because if you want to get to somewhere that you haven't been, you have to guess you have to be with someone who has gone to where you want to be. You need a travel guide. It's kind of like a travel guide in essentially. Because at the end of the day, like people a lot of times we've conditioned ourselves to think that I just gotta do it on my own. I just gotta accomplish this. I'm gonna do this on my own. But it's like at the end of the day, you don't get a bigger cookie in the world once you got there. Because if somebody also is in the same position as you, but now has the chance to learn from somebody who's already there and now our is like instead of making the same mistakes that that person has made, now that person is like, hey, this is what I did to do this. This is the mistakes you can avoid. It's not necessarily trying to remove the chances of you making a mistake, because at the end of the day, you are the only person who is able to do what they want to do, right? But being able to listen to somebody and be like, hey, they've done this, and I know that they said if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and you're willing to put your ego aside to learn from somebody who is at a place that you want to be. I think mentorship in general has collapsed timeframes in people's lives, right? Being able to get to a place faster than you could have before. And I love the whole concept of mentorship because it's not necessarily about like growing financially or getting somewhere in life, but it's also growing yourself. They're there to to help you grow yourself. I think I've realized the difference between coaching and mentorship, right? Having coaches in your life coach you in the sense of growing yourself, in your career, growing yourself, getting somewhere in a certain position at a company, for example. You get coaches from people who are supervisors who are higher level than you to coach you to prepare yourself to be in a managerial or leadership role. But I guess mentorship is a whole other aspect of where it's like, hey, it's mentorship in life because life is things in our lives are the biggest things that hold us back in anything. What happens in our life, we all face difficulty, challenges. Like you said, like things just happen in our world. But having mentors to be there to give you perspective in a sense of like, I know what you're going through, and I'm here for you to help you guide you through your life and be someone who you can lean on, right? Because they've they have a wider viewpoint on things. They have that bigger perspective in your life. Like this is what you're going through, and I know it's tough because when we're in our own, situations, hardships, we don't really notice things. We're just kind of in that moment. But when you have somebody who can step out of that and see, hey, this is normal. This happens, but we can work together to overcome this and move forward in life. I mean, I don't know. Mentorship has definitely been one of the biggest things for me, at least, being fortunate to have mentors in my life that I've learned from, that I've grown, that I've been able to lean on to grow myself. I think a lot of it, anything that I've accomplished, I would never say I would never take the full credit because I know it's always have been the people that I've been fortunate enough to have in my life to learn from, right? So it's a whole other topic there to get in, but I think that's kind of the gist, man.
It's still fascinating because like from the way that you speak, you feel passionate about bringing value
Hmm.
to others and watching them grow to become better
Hmm.
individual.
Yes.
And listening to you speak, like you were just passionate about it. You were just like in that moment, and stuck out,
Thank
and
you.
it was just truly
Thank you.
you.
I realize
You know?
that's huge perspective.
Like,
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Thank you. That's
yeah. In fact, what would in
hmm
mentorship, what would you say? You know, as well as well in passing, since I know that you're also a bit of
yeah.
blogger, like what would you say are your like the values and purpose that you
And when it
have?
comes to that aspect of my life, when it comes to mentorship, yeah, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great question. I think the value that I have is, I think being able to be someone who impacts other people's lives in a positive sense. I think I mentioned that earlier. I think I'm one of the biggest purpose in life through mentorship, through doing things entrepreneurially, is to affect change in others in a positive way, have an influence, right? I heard this one quote from my pastor actually. He says, affluence, like actually he quoted someone else. He says, affluence is for influence, income is for impact, and prosperity has a purpose, right? And that's such a good quote. I'll repeat myself like affluence is for influence, income is for impact, and prosperity has a purpose. And at first, when I heard that, I was like, what does that even mean? And I think it all ties down to the greater you grow yourself, right? Affluence. It's a great amount of wealth. Just acquiring wealth, being successful in the world allows you to be influential, right? You see anybody who's influential is somewhat successful financially in the world, as you can see on the internet, social media. Most people who have influence in the world are people who
Hmm.
acquired affluence, right? And a lot of times, people who have acquired affluence are not the most positive thinking people. They're not the most impactful people. They influence people in negativity, in a negative way, I guess, if that's a word.
Right. Those who are just casting
Yes,
thrones and
as you
yeah,
can see on social media, like some of the things that people are listening to, I'm like, this is not proactive. This is not very good for your mind, right? And I guess that's
yeah.
what goes on the second core. Like having income is for impact, right? When you are able to have a great amount of income in a sense of being successful financially, you're able to cause change, have charities, have things, ministries, all those things in the world that actually create impact in that sense, right? I don't know, like you see Mr.
Mhm.
Beast, for example. I think Mr. Beast is a big YouTuber that has done insane amount of things all over the world. He's using his platform, his YouTube page, the income he's made from that to do amazing things around the world, right? Things like that, right? The income that he's earned from being a YouTuber, being somebody who's created that to go out in the world and create a great impact. And you don't hear about those things too many. You only hear about people who are just doing nonsense in the world, right? But being able to actually learn from people sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
go on if you want to add on.
Yeah, because that's just baiting. That's bait to the internet. That's
Yeah,
what sells. That's got that
yes.
shock value. But the people that are actually doing the work around the
You
world,
don't hear about it.
it's like, no,
Yeah,
it's
that's boring.
that's
Like being a good
boring.
person, like nobody wants to hear that because it questions their own reality, and it's like, wow, it's making me feel bad that this person
Yeah,
is doing so good. And I was like, I don't want to hear that, you know, you know.
no, everybody wants to hear see the cat
Yes,
fight
yeah,
on the E
yeah. They just
network,
want to
and
see things that just validate their existence in a sense, not to be very rough. I was talking to one of my coworkers, like she's like,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm just gonna go and watch some, I guess trashy TV because it makes me feel a little bit better about my own circumstances." And I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but at the end of the day, like you need to be, you need to be doing things, watching things that that grow your soul, right? So it's that aspect of like people watch things that
Yeah.
also just make them okay with who they are at the moment, right? With who they're living. And yeah, and obviously prosperity, which the last one is has a purpose, is when you're when you're prosperous, it's a reason why there's a purpose to why you're successful. There's a reason why you've acquired the wealth. I mean, there's so many stories like Job in the Bible, right? I mean, I think God allows you to be prosper because he knows the great impact that you can cause in the world, what you can be. We need more good people with money, I think, at the end of the day, rather than a lot of people who are not really doing good things, having all the wealth, right?
Amen to that.
And I heard the reason why it's like at the end of the day, there's always laws of the world, of the universe. It's like if you work hard, you will be successful,
Hmm.
right? But and a lot of those people that are, I guess, aren't the most positive do work hard, so they acquire the wealth, but they don't have the mindset or the heart to be giving, right? And money is only a multiplier, so whatever is in your heart is what's going to be multiplied by money. So at the end of the day, people say money is the root of all evil, but it's the love of money that's the root of all evil.
Money
Yeah,
is the
it's the
root of
love
all
of
evil.
money,
Yeah, I
right?
know. Of course, a lyric in the
Yeah,
OJs, but everybody knows it's
money,
the love of money is the root
evil,
of
not money
yeah.
itself. Money is
But
just money is a tool.
yeah, you can. Yeah,
We all
we
need
all
it.
need it. Yeah,
Money doesn't cause you to do bad things. Money is just there, right? It's you loving that
yeah.
accumulation of just owning more and more and more is that's what's the root of all
Mhm.
evil, right? So that's huge, man.
Mhm.
It's huge. Can go on a tangent
Yeah,
forever on this.
that was
Yes.
why. Yeah, and finally, there's just two last questions. The questions that I had to
Hmm.
ask everybody: how do you define being authentic?
Oh, that's a good question. Authenticity, man. I think it's living to your, like you said, living through your values. I think a lot of times we're definitely easily influenced by other people. I think for me, living with authenticity is being able to realize who I am and being okay with who I am, and not wanting to please everyone. Right? I think for the longest time, I've suffered with the disease of people pleasing, of wanting to please everyone, but you can't please everyone in the world, and it's being okay with understanding that you're not gonna be a, a people pleaser. You're not gonna please everyone that you have in your world, and it's being okay with who you are, to live with who you are inside, because people are only gonna love you for who you are at the end of the day. And if you live with authenticity, that's actually gonna allow the right people in your life to come and be in your life, rather than having people you've accumulated from being inauthentic, right? And for me, that's my biggest thing that I try to do on a very day to day basis is like, am I living to my true values? Am I being as authentic as I can be in a conversation with people that I meet? Am I being who I am at the end of the day? So I think being authentic is obviously a lifelong journey, and I think every day telling having a conversation with yourself to be like, hey, how can I live my life to my truest self every day? And I think that's something that I try to tell myself.
What would your advice be to individuals struggling to be their most
Um,
authentic selves?
that's exactly. I think that's the biggest thing that I kind of answered at the end there is like, I think be in a position where you are, you know, willing to learn. I think for me, the biggest things that I learned when it comes to being authentic, I started reading books. I read a lot. I've started reading a lot of books. I started like meditating. I started doing things. I'm still learning when it comes to meditating. I think that aspect is obviously something I'm trying to grow into and have conversations. And for people who are struggling to live their most authentic self, is I think being able to have a sit down and actually ask themselves like, how do you want to live your life? You know, a lot of times we always ask ourselves, like, wow, what do you want to do? We always talk about occupational things. And when we ask people, like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? But, like, well, how do you actually want to live your life? What is it that you want to do with your life? And being able to ask yourself those questions and actually get to the nitty gritty of how you want to live your life, and is what you're doing right now leading to what you want to do with your life, right? if if you, let's say people said, if they gave you like, hey, if you're gonna die in 5 years and they gave you $200 million in cash, would you still be living the same way you're living right now? If people say they will change everything in their life, that means they're not living to their most authentic self, right? At the end of the day, it's like, well, what would you do in those 5 years? And if you have an answer to what you would do in those 5 years, you probably have an answer to how you actually want to live your life. What's your most authentic self? What do you want to accomplish in the world? And it's having those, asking yourself that question of like, well, if you had only 5 years to live and you had $200 million in cash, what is it that you would do? And if you have an answer, I think that's a bit of a clue to how you probably want to live your life. So I guess that's what I would add. Thank you.
Words of wisdom from
Appreciate
Cesar
it.
Manzi. You can follow Caesar at on Instagram at
Thank you so much.
Caesar.manzi. And with that in mind, I would like to thank my guest, Caesar Manzi, for being on
Hmm.
Truth Be Told. And I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you, the listeners, and, uh, and and the
Hmm.
viewers. Remember to follow me on my social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Remember to like and subscribe. And remember,
Thank you so
stay
much.
true.